The motion that was put to the Combined Precincts Committee referred to Lane Cove Alive. And Lane Cove Alive was a formal consultative body established by Lane Cove Council, and it was established following the failure of a planning study in Lane Cove for redevelopment of the Rosenthal Avenue car park, where it had been proposed to engage a developer to build some high-rise residential and in exchange provide some open space. And that proposal was rejected by the community, and following that rejection, Council then established a formal consultative body, Lane Cove Alive, which included local residents. It also included a youth representative, and the idea being to provide input on things such as consultants' briefs, where additional workshopping and forums might be needed, and processes such as that. So an advisory body only in terms of helping the process along. And the outcome was a planning study that was fully supported by the community, and following a design competition for the Canopy project, which is a parking, retail and open space project, a really successful revitalisation of the Lane Cove village.
Thank you. That's your 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Are there any questions of the Speaker? Councillor Gibson?
Thank you for that. So do you, you made comments earlier on about community consultation. Do you see this replacing community consultation?
No, absolutely not. No, it's augmenting it. And I mean, the consultation process at the moment, and I have to say, the process that I've seen Council engage in with respect to the Cremorne Plaza and Langley Place upgrade projects has been a great, a really good process. So I've seen an improvement there, and I've had a lot of locals comment on it. It's been great to have a walk around, talk to the designers and things like that, rather than just here's a couple of options, give us your comments. And one of the other things I think is that the traditional processes, things get sent out just to the local precincts.
No, I was just asking you. I was just asking
you. I would like to see more involvement of different groups of people.
The answer may be uninterrupted.
All right. And do you see local property owners and business people being part of this, or are they going to be blocked out entirely?
Well, at the end of the day, the resolution calls for a process to be managed, I think, by the General Manager, and I think the General Manager is probably well placed to advise on that. I think with Lane Cove Alive, it did not include property owners or anybody else with a pecuniary interest.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Thank you for your participation. I call on the next speaker, Glenn Courier. If you would come forward, please.
Hello, Madam Mayor and Councillors. My name's Glenn Courier. I'm from Neutral Precinct. I'm the co-chair, and I'm speaking on behalf of Neutral Precinct. I'm speaking for the proposal. Our precinct is heavily affected by what happens in the Neutral Bay Town Centre, both by the traffic, the overshadowing, the built environment we look at, and to be honest, the choice of shops and facilities we have and workplaces. So we're totally affected by it. There's been a lot of change in Neutral Bay recently, most of it thrust upon us by Transport for New South Wales. And because of their poor consultation, which is the same for the rest of the council area, we're feeling pretty disenfranchised down there in that respect, and it's been thrust upon us. Our precinct, once we get a chance, and I can think of the planning proposal, and the whole community was totally mobilised, and you saw the reaction here and in many other avenues of what happened when people feel strongly about it. We think that this would be an adjunct to those sort of facilities so that there could be quicker and faster feedback to council on situations, mainly for exactly as Meredith said, for the situation to keep things moving. But as an adjunct to what's already happening, there's a process to go through with precincts, and this would just add to it. And to be honest, can you have too much community consultation? I don't think you can. I mean, I'm just being totally blunt. So we're totally for it.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the Speaker? No? Oh, Councillor Spenceley?
Just in regard, I suppose, to a point raised by Councillor Gibson, do you think it's worthwhile engaging with the leaseholders?
I personally think they're stakeholders. They're the same as all of us. We're all a stakeholder, and I think it's very unfair if a stakeholder, I don't see it as enough us against them. I think it has to be a consultation where we all.
It's got to work together, right?
Yeah, and so I don't think that stakeholders should be, and we don't exclude them from our precinct. If a stakeholder wants to come down, they're most welcome. So there is no exclusion in my mind, and I think that all parties should be represented.
Thank you.
You have a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask that same question, so thank you, Councillor Spenceley. I think that was a good point you raised there, Mr Cuvée. Now, what role do you think the precincts will have in this?
With all due respect, I'm going to rule that out of order. It's clear from the motion itself what's intended, and that's not.
I'm just wanting to ask.
Well, we're establishing it, so thank you.
I can't ask the question.
I'll allow you to ask the question, but it isn't directly related to what's before us.
Well, it is. This came out of. So, what role do you see this being separate from the precincts, and that we encourage people who aren't heavily involved in the precinct system to sit in this consultation group? Or?
My real thoughts.
Yeah.
The diverse range and representation we have from the community, the better.
Yeah.
And I believe that. I mean, the precincts engage a number of people, and they're usually highly committed. And we find that in our own precinct. We have 200 or 300 people on our mailing list, and a much smaller number come, but at different events, people feel strongly about different things. So the wider, I think, as I said before, you just cannot consult too wide. I mean, that's really the truth. I mean, what I'd really like is we went and polled every single person in Neutral Bay, but we're not going to get
So
that.
you see it being a mixture of
people
that we don't hear
naturally,
from and
who
of
without
age groups.
a mixture of age groups. Naturally, there'll be precinct members who are highly committed, highly involved in their community, and they'll end up on it. That will be,
But yeah, so
but only because they're highly involved
Yeah.
people. And I wouldn't be surprised if Woolworths or Coles were interested enough, they'd get someone down here. But last time when they presented to council, they phoned it in, as I recall, from the thing. They didn't actually come and present. So I believe that everyone should be involved, and that's whether you're a stakeholder and you've got a property or you live around the corner. So that would be my answer to that.
Okay, thanks for that.
Thank you for your participation. No.
I just have a procedural.
Well, if you put it quickly, because
Okay,
it's actually the mayoral minute.
Yeah, I know, but I was going to ask for the rescission motion to be brought forward.
No, we're dealing. Thank you. No, thank you
because
very.
it's all part of
No,
the same.
thank you, Councillor Gibson. We're dealing with the mayoral minute. I ruled that out of order. Could you
Okay.
turn off your microphone?
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. I'll just speak briefly to this. There seems to be some confusion from councillors. I think it's pretty self-explanatory from the points 1, 2, 3 and 4 of the mayoral minute as to what exactly this is intended to do. You may recall that some meetings ago we adopted a community engagement strategy for this planning study. We've already done that. It includes engagement with all of the relevant stakeholders, including property owners. This is in an augmentation and an attempt for this council to explore different ways to engage on strategic planning, ways that we know from experience in Lane Cove and in Willoughby local government area that have been highly successful. And as you would have seen in the background to the motion, I mentioned the Canopy project and the Quadrant. So this is in addition to. And so on that basis, I urge you to support the motion. Are there any speakers? I think the first speaker is Councillor Mutton.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm a little cautious with this motion, in part because we've now got a change of government. And we've got a government that has announced that it will have a centralist approach to major planning issues. We've got a government that has announced that parts of North Sydney will be targeted for high-rise development, will be targeted for low-cost housing. We've got a very rapidly changing environment. And it's in that changing environment I would prefer to have a better understanding of what this consultation process would lead to. And I would hope that Council will develop, rather than a piecemeal approach to Neutral Bay or Milson's Point, will develop an overall strategy to how it is going to deal with the new government, with its new policies and its new approaches to planning processes. I have another problem with this motion. It talks about Lane Cove Alive. I've never heard of Lane Cove Alive. Perhaps I live in a particularly narrow world. But I'm being called upon to support a motion that advocates a structure that I know nothing about. So I think a motion like this needs to come forward with a comprehensive briefing on how it fits into the strategies that this council is going to adopt when it comes to dealing with the state government. Especially when we look to an area like Neutral Bay, where there are some major players with major developments, and we've got one player, Coles, that appears to be looking at every which way to increase the amount of parking around its store. So I've become concerned that this committee will become, if you like, a Coles-centric committee. And we need to firstly develop the policies to deal with the state government, the policies to apply to Neutral Bay or North Sydney generally, and Neutral Bay in particular. So I feel ill-briefed and ill-equipped to deal with this motion as put. Thank you, Mayor.
Are you asking for a deferral, Councillor Martin?
Sorry, Councillor Spenceley, you wish to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. Unlike my learned and eloquent friend, I'm actually very much in support of this motion. I think we're now 1.5 years into this term of council. We have about the same left, and it saddens me to say that we haven't made as much progress on Neutral Bay Town Centre as perhaps we may all have liked. Neutral Bay Town Centre is in need of upgrades. It's in need of work. The boat has already sailed in that a large property transaction has occurred. Leases are coming to an end. And I see this as a way for us to get it right. Us to get it right the first time around, which is to provide the community with exactly what the community is after. I think we can sit around here and think that we know what the community wants. I think council staff can sit around and think they know what the community wants. We got that wrong last time, and we got it wrong wildly. So I think that to live with the upgrade of North Neutral Bay Town Centre now for probably another 30, 40, 50 years, we need to get it right, and getting it right is listening to the community. So more community engagement to me means we will get and provide more of exactly what the community wants. So I'm in support of this. I'd like to get on with it, and I would like to get the community feedback as loudly and as clearly and as most diversely as possible. Thank you.
Councillor Gibson, you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Look, I agree with this approach in general. I must say it's a shame it didn't come a year ago rather than now. We're sort of well into the process, so we've waited a bit too long to establish this group. I would have liked the Mayor to just defer it just for 2 weeks. We have 2 weekly meetings now, and I'd like to have a briefing and just be able to find out a bit more about how how Lane Cove Alive operated. We might be able to get the former Mayor of Lane Cove over to talk to us. I just don't know enough about, and this was a late mayoral minute, I haven't had time to ring and find out. I strongly disagree with Councillor Spenceley that we got it really wrong last time. No, we didn't. The majority of our residents, after extensive surveys, said they would support development and reasonable growth for outstanding open spaces on the ground. And our community were scared by a picture that was a false picture that was circulated showing wall-to-wall construction on Military Road, which was a totally false diagram. So we had our community scared by lies.
I'll call you to order on that because that is not true and it's irrelevant to this discussion.
it's
So
not.
would
We're
you
talking
please
about-
continue to debate what is before us, which is the establishment of a community consultation group.
I'm doing
Thank you.
that, but we can go into the history here a little bit, Mayor. I think it's very important. So the community, I think it's very important. The community does need to know what's happening, give input, but if they give input on something that's totally false, then that's problematic. So people are coming into this process already having in their minds a picture of something that was simply never going to happen, and that's really sad. I would just urge the Mayor just to delay it for just 2 weeks. We're a year and a half into this council. Another 2 weeks won't make any difference, and just so we can get a little bit more. I want a bit more of an understanding, and I'd like to, have a briefing with the General Manager here in person. I'd like to be able to ask some questions about the process of selecting members to this committee. In my mind, if it's a lot of the members are made up with precinct members, I think that's totally wrong and I can't agree with it. The precincts have a forum and have a very strong voice of their own, and I see this as an opportunity to get other voices. What we should be encouraging is, I don't know, a Year 12 student from Redlands who has her eyes set on a career in planning and wants to do a planning degree next year and lives around Neutral Bay, and we need young people. We're not dealing with the challenge that we fail constantly to communicate and get feedback by younger members of our community and busy people. We need someone from a mum from a local playgroup who shops and uses Neutral Bay. We need a really wide range of people, and I would feel very upset if it becomes another precinct forum, because the precincts are great. They have their say, an important say, and we all jump. This mayoral minute is a result of a precinct motion. But I don't think the same people should have 2 voices. I think that would be wrong. I think there should be a totally different group, and I think we've got to be really imaginative about how we're going to find the people to sit on this committee. And it's got to be a lot of young people. So I would just urge the Mayor to defer just for 2 weeks.
Thank you. Councillor Lapouris and then Councillor Lamb.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm not necessarily against this motion, but I do have a question about it. North Sydney Council has a robust community engagement policy already. I just would like to know how would this differ and how would this help?
I'll give the answer to that as it's my motion. It's in addition to what is in our community participation plan and in the adopted engagement strategy for this planning study.
I mean, would it help further though? Do you think it would really?
It's clear, I've spoken to it, it's clear I think that it is a good way for us to extend the type of engagement we have on the planning study.
Okay.
Councillor Lamb.
I would just like to say, as a young member of council, I do support this motion, and I'm very enthusiastic about how the modelling of community engagement is provided, as there is no easy way to get more people to speak. We can only give them a format and hope they come to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Santa.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to say that along with Councillors Lamb and Spenceley, I endorse this motion. I'm delighted that it's come up. I do have some concern, with great respect, with Councillor Mutton's comment about the Labor government's announcement. We don't know completely yet. They haven't announced their policy. There were a couple of statements made, but I don't think that they can be held to account for those. The big issue is that, as Councillor Spenceley said, we get on with this and demonstrate to the new government that we have a community-related plan which the community endorses, it would be very difficult for any government to oppose such a step. And I think we need to move along in that regard and get going with it.
Councillor Berrigan.
Thank you, Mayor. I support the motion, and having read your mayoral minute, thank you. I googled about Lane Cove Alive and everything, and you can actually find out a lot of information if you just Google. And then I rang up a couple of people and I found out the information for myself, and I found that I had plenty of time to do that. The idea that this is related to anything to do with the new state government, I'm sorry, I just can't. That's just absolutely way over there. We are looking at something which needs our attention, and it needs it now. It was very clear from the speakers. We know that Coles and Woolworths, this is a timing issue, and the greater reach that we can get in terms of community consultation, the better. There were comments about that we had great community consultation and it was about height and everything. Well, we had a really big community consultation at the end of 2021, and that was called an election. And the people that supported all of that, a big high-rise Military Road down, tunnel down, got voted out, and that's why we're all here. So, so we have a majority that has shifted. The majority has changed. The first thing that was taken away was the Military Road planning study, and this is a really different way, and as the Mayor has said, it's to augment what we already do, so it's really modelling the best possible community consultation that we can do in trying to reach every possible group. And it's lovely that it can be modelled on something that's already been successful. And anyone that's been to the Canopy can see that. You can feel it, you can touch it, you can eat in it, you can look in it, you can drive in it, and you can go and look at what's been happening at Castle Craig to further engage our community who are crying out for us to do something in Neutral Bay, and we are meeting them at the front door. So thank you, and I'm very happy to support the motion.
Mayor, could I ask the General Manager a question, please? I think it's important.
Yes, you may ask a question succinctly.
Good evening, General Manager. As you might have picked up from my comments, I do support this, but I worry about the makeup of the group and how members of that group would be selected. I think all stakeholders would need to be invited to join in. Local property, we couldn't keep local property owners out of a group called the community consultation.
Could you ask the question succinctly, directly and without argument? And that's what's required by clause 9.18. Thank you.
If you just let me speak, I'll be much faster. Thanks, Mayor. So how would you go about setting up such a group, General Manager?
Through you, Madam Mayor, it's always good to have a diversity amongst groups like this. I would say the mayoral minute as typed on the screen at the moment says consistent with the process adopted for local planning panels. In looking at that, we would have to consider conflicts of interest. So we would ask for those conflicts of interest to be made aware at application stage.
Thank you, General Manager. I'm just going to speak briefly in reply, and then I'll put the mayoral minute. I think, with due respect to a number of the councillors around this table, there is a fundamental misunderstanding about the planning system in New South Wales. The comments about us adopting that the state government is adopting a centrist approach to planning and it's targeting this council, frankly, is somewhat hysterical. The fact is that yesterday, on the day before the election and the day after, the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979 applies. What we're dealing with the Neutral Bay planning study, Neutral Bay Town Centre planning study, is a very important piece of local planning. It's a study to inform our local environmental plan. And so whatever comments were made during an election campaign are irrelevant to us this evening. In fact, I'm confident that once those who made those comments understand the careful planning that North Sydney Council has done in order to meet and exceed the provisions of the District North Plan and targets that have put on us, that they will be impressed by the work that has been done. And so if you really are concerned about a threat from the state government, Well, we've been dealing with threats from the state government around planning, and certainly as a ward councillor of very long standing, I can tell you that the best shield to that is really strong, well consulted with the community, local planning. That's how we've managed to avoid 60 floors in Crow's Nest and St Leonard's. Because we had excellence in planning. And so that's the reason that I'm putting this forward. This is another way to engage as part of what is already a very robust community engagement strategy. So I put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. That is carried. We have one more registered speaker, and that is on the notice of rescission, item 11.1. So do I have a procedural motion to open the public forum? Thank you, Councillor Beregi, seconded by Councillor Welsh. I'll just wait until Councillor Lapouris leaves the chamber. And it's being brought forward now because we've opened the public forum, and then we'll be dealing with the rescission. That's what we do at each meeting. And so I put that motion. All those in favour? Thank you. That's carried. I ask, there's one registered speaker, Pete Rapetti, if you would come forward to address council.
Do I sit down in the chair?
Yes, you do.
Never spoken at a council before, so when do I start?
Now.
Oh, okay. So I'm just chatting, thinking about a lot of the town plaza, and I think it's a really good idea. And there's a lot of good stuff happening, but I'm just concerned or querying about Young Street Plaza specifically, as I know there's been a lot of debate quite often, and I would rather see something else happen to it. It's not the greatest space at the moment, and any plan that I've seen, not that I've seen a lot, but I have seen a fair bit, that it doesn't look as good as it could be. Should it be somewhere else or anything? Also want to say that I'm in favour of the idea of it, of a green space, public space, open for all. Something like Lane Cove would be much more appropriate, especially given the size of the location. It's quite small, it's very, very narrow, it's cramped, there's a lot of traffic flow issues, whereas somewhere like Lane Cove has a really good area, it's really, really well situated, it's in the middle of everything, so there's a lot of centrality to it, as well as the green space. It is very, very nice to be in there. I go there quite often if anyone is interested. There's quite a few good cafes there, can recommend. Also, I spent most of my early days living in the Inner West, and in Inner West there's quite a few street conversions into parks and public spaces, and they're all fantastic in idea, but in reality what ends up happening is that they just don't get used. And what does become of the space is just kind of an empty excuse of the space to say, hey, we've done something, look at it, it's great, isn't it? No, nothing really happens. But a lot of the issue that I've seen coming from that in a number of locations is because of how the surrounding area deals with traffic flow and how the surrounding area functions as a whole becomes quite problematic. And especially with the traffic flow there, you would have to basically reroute the entirety of that area behind in the street and get rid of curb to boot to curb parking, because it would just, there's too much congestion. There's quite a lot of issues there already. If anyone's ever driven down there, you'd probably know how much, as soon as one person parks, it shuts everything down on the street. If there's a Woolies truck, forget it. So I just wanted to share my bit, say that it's a really good idea. I really, really like the ethos behind it, and that we are looking for green spaces, but I just would rather see it somewhere a bit more thought out rather than somewhere that just can be there. I would rather see something happen, take a little bit longer time to get there maybe, but at least somewhere that will fit the purpose and will actually attract people to go in there. As one of my big concerns, as I said before, a lot of the times they're really good ideas, but they just don't attract people to go there. And to just finish, Lane Cove is very attractive. It's very, very easy. It's very, very nice to be there. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Councillor Gibson?
So do you live or work near Neutral Bay?
Yeah, very close. So I go up there probably at least 4-5 times a week, getting coffee, whatever, doing shopping, all that stuff. So I go past it quite quite a fair bit.
And I just wanted to ask, were you aware that the permanent plaza plans actually had grass and trees?
Yeah,
to go in
totally.
there?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of one of the projects that I saw did have all that, and I did like it, and I did think it was a good idea again. But in essence, it fails to take into account the entirety of the traffic flow around it, as not that area, because it's so small and the streets are so narrow, and the boot to curb parking specifically, as soon as anything happens there, it stops. Everything stops. Everything becomes a nightmare to park. With the car park the way it is, again, all really good ideas, but in practice, it would just become a sort of bit of an issue overall, as everything would congest more. And if there is a worry about congestion, and you say, oh, well, we can open that up, but there's street parking on Military Road as well. So at any point, there can be quite a lot of issue.
Thank you. I don't think there are any other questions. Thank you for your participation.
No worries.
Thank you.
Also happy to be on the consulting team for that one too.
Well, you can
I am still under 30,
enter an
believe it or
expression
not.
of interest. Thank you. That closes the public forum. Is there a mover for the rescission motion? Councillor Gibson.
I'll move it.
And a seconder,
I'll move it now.
seconded by Councillor Spenceley. You wish to speak to your
yes,
rescission?
what I was going to suggest, and that was why I was of a mind to bring it forward, but in a way it has been brought forward. So we've just decided that we're going to establish a community consultation group. Well, one of the things that's got to be in this group is what to do with Young Street. Please, let's use common sense here. Let's rescind the motion, and I would put forward an alternative motion that that this be a matter included immediately in the meetings of the community consultation group. We can hear what people have to say, whether they wanted a two-way street. I was surprised at the last Neutral Bay Streetscape meeting where the mayor told me that that there was work happening behind the scenes to make Young Street a one-way street, and the head of the Chamber of Commerce nearly fell off his chair. Of course, neither of us had heard anything about it. Maybe that's a good idea, maybe it isn't, but I certainly hadn't heard about it, and when the Chamber of Commerce is left out of such discussions, that's just not a good thing. So why on earth the Young Street hasn't been opened yet? It's still sitting there. Maybe this is the time, as we say, we get some young people on this community committee, and let's just throw this in. What difference would it make, councillors? We might just want an open space. I've always thought of that space with a green wall along Military Road, so that you actually had a very sheltered, quiet space to sit in the middle of a busy Neutral Bay. That there would be, like we moved at the last meeting, that there would be natural grass there, that there'd be trees. I don't know, maybe we don't want it all and we want to turn it into part of the car park. Maybe it should have an entirely different use. Who knows? Could be just a car park. But why don't we use this opportunity to get it right? It would be absolutely reckless to continue on with planning behind the scenes about one-way traffic and one-way streets. As I say, the Chamber of Commerce wasn't even alerted to that possibility. I haven't been alerted. I don't know how many councillors around this room are aware of those discussions, but it's something that needs to be part of the community consultation group. That is perfectly obvious. Why don't we do the sensible thing, set personal politics aside and make Young Street a part of this? So if the rescission motion is successful, I would just move that we make the redevelopment or the opening, that we make Young Street Plaza a priority in the newly formed community consultation group, and that group have a say into whether it should stay closed, be opened up fully, be half opened up, be turned into a car park, be turned into a slab of grass, whatever. Could be turned into a basketball court, who knows? But we've now got another opportunity. We've now got another opportunity to work out what we can do with this block of land and not lose our $2 million. So I would urge everyone just to think about that, and that would be, should the rescission motion be successful, that is my idea, that it be incorporated into this group as a matter of urgency.
Thank you. If you turn off your microphone, Councillor Spenceley.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to foreshadow a motion that if the rescission motion is unsuccessful, that Council does not proceed with the permanent upgrade to Young Street Plaza, but pauses opening Young Street Plaza and places the outcome or the design of Young Street Plaza, be it road or be it one-way or two-way, or be it as community open space, into community consultation in conjunction with the town centre planning.
Thank you. Just as a matter of procedure, that's not how a rescission works. We just deal with the rescission, but you'll have an opportunity at another council meeting to put that forward as a motion. Okay, Councillor Mutton.
Thank you, Mayor. I look across to the city of Sydney and I see the remarkable things they are doing over there to pedestrianise the city. I look around Loftus Street, see the street closures that have opened up for pedestrians and made cafes vibrant. I look around George Street, a major street, now being converted to essentially pedestrians and trams. I look around Eddy Avenue and see the number of streets that have been made dead ends and converted into pedestrian areas. Now, we do a lot of talking about we're going to make North Sydney friendly for pedestrians. And we do a lot of talking about the difficulties of traffic. Indeed, we acknowledge that. We're looking at seriously limiting car ownership in North Sydney. What we've got to start seriously doing is increasing the open green space, increasing the recreational areas that are available to our community. And effectively, the best way to do that is to take back our streets from motor vehicles. If you genuinely believe the future is for pedestrians, then think very carefully about voting against this rescission motion. If you genuinely believe the future is for pedestrians, the future thinking needs to be which streets next, not just stop. So it's abhorrent when you look at the example of the City of Sydney and our tentative step to take back a little bit of Neutral Bay and make it open green space is being shredded in the most awful possible way. And think carefully. This rescission motion is about voting for pedestrians or voting for cars. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Spenceley, did you wish to speak to the rescission? Thank you.
Thank you, Thank you, Mayor. We've done this many times, so I won't necessarily go over all of the points. I think if I can, I'll reverse it and talk about the points that were maybe used as a reason to support the reopening to cars of Young Street Plaza. There was many that it wasn't used. There was many that, Woolworths trucks have difficulty navigating in that direction, which may or may not be the case if, may or may not be relevant if we actually are only able to open it one way. So there is a lot that's changed. I think one of the biggest arguments was that the community consultation wasn't right, that the letters didn't go to the business operators, the leaseholders, rather than the landowners, and that we didn't have a proper community consultation process. Now, that was done previous to me joining the council, but I can say the amount of data and the amount of information, we had mobile phone data, usage patterns. Now, there was an argument that was all done during COVID and therefore there was more people walking around. It was a pretty decent amount of feedback and input from the community on Young Street Plaza. And I would say, having read it a number of times, it was more in favour of that remaining as, or becoming community open space and remaining as community open space than against. But I'll take it that maybe there was some issues with the way that that feedback was generated and the amount of people that were open to provide that feedback or alerted to provide that feedback. So, councillors, let's get some feedback. Let's not do something that may and most likely will be enabled to redo, which is to open a road that Transport has control over. Once we reopen that road, Transport, I highly doubt, will let us close it again. So let's not walk down a one-way path. Let's go out to community consultation. Let's get all of the issues that were raised previously on the way that we consulted with the community on this. Let's resolve that. Let's not be known as a council, and I look to my Sustainable Australia party members here. Let's not look to open a road as being one of the, and reducing community open space as being one of the defining things that this council does. Let's not go through that one-way door. So I'm happy for this. If the community consultation is done, I will support the community's view. I will be very willing and happy to open it as a road again, if that's what the community wants. But I'd like to go and ask them, and if there were problems in the way that we asked them last time, let's ask them properly. Let's not walk through the one-way door. Let's not be known as the council that actually took public open space and turned it back into a road. Let's not be the people that paid money to put down bitumen in a world where putting down bitumen is no longer where we are heading. So please, councillors, vote to rescind this motion. Let's open it up for community consultation. Let's pause what we do there, come up with a holistic approach, but not walk through one-way doors and open our streets, our town centre to traffic where we may and find that the community wants that, or we may find that the design for the town centre, is vastly improved by having Young Street closed. So let's address it holistically. Let's address it with community input, and let's come back to this table with that information. So let's put the whole issue behind us and go forward with options. And let's do that properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Mayor. Just in response, I'll just say that my position has always been to look at this issue holistically rather than just a small section of road, and that's why I voted the way I did. So I'll stick with what I've said over the previous 12 plus months.
Thank you. Are there any other? Councillor Welsh.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. I absolutely agree with you. What is this, the third time we're going through this? And when will we be going through this again? I think we should open up this road. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to speak very briefly from the chair, and then I'll give Councillor Gibson her right of reply. First of all, the resolution of council that you're seeking to rescind stands. The grant from Transport for New South Wales for the Beeline corridor remains in council's bank account. We've had an indication prior to the commencement of the caretaker period that Transport for New South Wales are more than likely, if not entirely likely, to allow us retention of that grant. We have a new minister, a new government, and I'll continue the discussions. Councillor Gibson sought to, frankly, twist something that I said in the Neutral Bay Streetscape Committee, which was in response to what was happening with those discussions and negotiations. I explained that part of that was to be able to demonstrate, because the resolution of council is to reopen Young Street, was to have discussions with Transport for New South Wales to demonstrate how that access and the traffic flow would work. All of those things are entirely right and consistent with the resolution of council, and it would not be appropriate for me to inform the Chamber of Commerce or anyone else until those discussions have come to a close, and that report would be coming back to this body, the governing body. I'm going to be voting against this. I thought that some of what the Speaker said tonight was really important. He talked about a cramped and small space. He talked about the difficulties with traffic flow and access to the north, and that was the reason I supported the original motion, that it wasn't just about the failings of the previous community consultation. It was that out of that consultation there was very strong community demand from those on the northern side of Military Road to reopen the access to the north of Neutral Bay and into Cremorne. You can have decent public domain and an open road. It is important. This isn't about just public open space or a road. This is about when you do good public open space, and I'm glad Councillor Mutton talked about the City of Sydney, because one of the criteria for it is that it be in the right place. It be in a place that isn't windswept, that isn't so close to the 6 lanes of traffic on Military Road. It is about making certain that it is somewhere where people want to be and need to be. And I would give, as a compare and contrast, the very process that is happening at Cremorne Plaza. And the reason that that plaza is so successful is because it is at a curve in the road that makes those people who use the plaza further away from the traffic than they can ever possibly be in Young Street. The thing about Young Street is that you're ignoring the best possible opportunity for decent pedestrianisation and public access, and that is on the land that Council owns, the Grosvenor Lane car park. Land that we've heard from speakers tonight is the subject of likely a DA within very short time from Coles, that there are opportunities here and through the Woolworths planning proposal that need not be reliant on the Neutral Bay planning study, that will be able to be negotiated and improve the public domain in locations that optimise the public open space rather than crowd a small group into a small, windswept, ill-chosen piece of land. And so that's the reason why I voted originally for the motion, and it's why I will be voting against the rescission tonight. Thank you. Councillor Gibson, you have a right of reply.
Yes, and I don't agree with your recollection of comments from the Neutral Bay Streetscape meeting. If there are discussions being held behind the scenes about making it a one-way street...
Again, I'm going to call you to apologise. I have been delegated by council by the very motion you're seeking to rescind to do negotiations.
And it would be nice
that is
to
proper.
hear about it.
When we're at the time when they have come to a conclusion, it is. No person, and I ask you to withdraw and apologise.
You have my 2 minutes.
No,
you... Well,
Councillor Gibson, again, you are insulting me. I ask that you withdraw and apologise.
You're taking up my whole speaking time.
Councillor Gibson, you are arguing with the chair, and I'm asking you again to withdraw and apologise.
No, I'm not going to withdraw and apologise because I didn't do anything.
Well, I'm calling you to order. I'm calling you to order.
You interrupted me.
No, Councillor Gibson,
Councillor
Gibson, I called you to order as it is the right of the chair to correct something that you were once again saying and imputing improper motives.
So I'll just I'll remain silent.
Councillor Gibson, you have your right of reply.
Can I please have it without being interrupted?
No, Councillor Gibson. Councillor Gibson, I'm speaking. Under clause 6.9, you are to resume your seat and be silent while the chair is speaking. I have ruled on a point of order. You are out of order, and I've asked that you withdraw and apologise. I'm asking you that under clause 15.12 of the Code of Meeting Practice.
So we're going to
withdraw and apologise.
I think actually you should apologise to me.
No, Councillor Gibson.
You interrupt me every time I get to my feet.
Again,
every time
no,
I
do
to
not.
My feet,
That again is a lie and imputing an improper motive. I'm calling you to order under clause 15.11 of the Code of Meeting Practice. You are again insulting me and imputing improper motives.
I am impugning nothing.
You are, and
You're
I have ruled that
now.
you have.
You're insulting me.
No,
now.
I am not.
You're
I ask
insulting
that
me now.
Councillor Gibson, you are required by the Code of Meeting Practice. All of us
you
here.
You are required to treat me with respect as well, ma'am.
Councillor Gibson, I am.
You are required
Councillor
to treat
Gibson,
me
you are
as an
showing
elected representative with
disrespect to the chair.
Well, you're showing disrespect
under clause
to me as a councillor.
6.9A, you
Point
are
of
to
order.
cease speaking. Thank you.
Councillor Gibson, you are being so rude.
Well, I've been interrupted when
Councillor
I'm having
Gibson,
my say.
there is a point of order from Councillor Welsh. Councillor Welsh, I rule in favour of your point of order because it's the same that I'm making, which is one, under clause 6.9A, when the chair is speaking, all councillors are to resume their seat and be silent. You are standing and you are continuing to speak. That is prima facie an act of disorder. So I'm asking that you withdraw and apologise.
I'll withdraw and apologise.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Gibson, that's all that you need to say. Now you have your right of reply.
Without interruption.
Councillor Gibson, now you have your right of reply.
Good. Okay, I'm just going to go back to where I was, and I hope I get my 2 minutes, because otherwise that would be a terrible, terrible process. So again, I think councillors should have been kept up to date, whether it just be, you know, a chat from the mayor saying, you know, what's your opinion on a one-way street at Young Street. I think going off on a different track without just casual conversations with the other councillors is not what I call transparent. But we have an opportunity here to, as I say, to either, and we can do both. If this rescission motion is successful, I would say put the matter of Young Street Plaza for urgent discussion in the community consultation group, but also, as Councillor Spenceley wisely pointed out, we just put this straight up for community consultation again. It's been a long time since we consulted on this. There's various stories and sides about whether the consultation was done properly or whether it wasn't. If it wasn't done properly, let's do it properly now. We cannot go wrong consulting our community on this again. Everyone can have their say. We've heard, it was some wise words from Mr. Cuvée, that you can never have too much consultation. How hard is it to ask to consult the community again? We never consulted the community about whether they wanted this road open. And my other fear is I have many members of the public and many pedestrians and many small business owners still talking to me about a footbridge across Military Road, which is becoming more and more difficult to cross. Now, the only place we can put a footbridge across Military Road is from May Gibbs Place straight across into the Young Street Plaza. That's the only opportunity because everything else is privately owned. We have 2 pieces of council-owned land, and May Gibbs Place is smaller than Young Street Plaza. And if I'm allowed to, I absolutely disagree with the mayor that this is windswept because everyone knows which way the winds in Sydney blow, and it's never windswept. You go down there on any afternoon after 3:30 and it's actually full of students. I've got photos on my phone where it was there was about 30 students I think they were all from Redlands, and they were sitting there doing some sort of homework project together with their teacher. So it doesn't matter how small a piece of open space is. It doesn't matter. This is larger than the Kirribilli Plaza. It's larger than May Gibbs Place, which is much loved. Why can't we aim to have Young Street Plaza and Grosvenor Street Plaza? Why don't we make Neutral Bay the village of plazas? Why can't we have both? I just don't understand the mentality that we can't have both. Let's go out to, if this is rescinded, I would move that it be formally put on the agenda of the first meeting of the new community consultation group, and that also we this matter go out to widespread community consultation once again, with the options of keeping it closed, opening it up fully, or opening it up one way. I think we're doing our community a disservice if we don't consult with them again. How could it hurt, councillors? What have we got to lose by consulting again? Just please put personal politics aside. Think of the people that actually do use this plaza. And as I see groups of school children there all the time. I'm sure they're Redland students. They seem to come down and have an open air discussion down there with their teachers.
That's your 5 minutes if you just finish.
Good, as I say, put personal politics aside, which is what this matter's always been about. Let's go out, consult our community, and I'll agree with whatever the consultation comes back with. If everyone wants the road open, I'll be moving a motion to open the road again. But I don't know what our community think now. Neutral Bay's changed. It's been a long time since we dealt with this matter. Let's let our community have a say on this important matter.
Thank you,
councillors.
Councillor Gibson. I put the rescission. All those in favour? The rescission is lost. We'll just call Councillor Lapouris back into the chamber. Thank you. Do I have any procedural motions? Councillor Berrigy.
Mayor, I note that Councillor Gibson wants to speak to every motion.
Yes, I've put my name down for every motion. Can I explain why?
No.
Okay. Well,
Thank you.
I'll put my name down for every motion, yes.
So you want to speak to it? There's nothing we can move on Globo?
Well, I'd like to explain. I'd like to seek reassurance from the chair before I.
Councillor Gibson,
Yeah.
do you support the moving of any of these items on Globo?
No, I think we should deal with all
Okay,
items now.
if you
now
insist on that,
from
we'll go to the
one
first
one.
item on the agenda, item 10.1. Moved by Councillor Berrigy. Is there a seconder? Councillor Welsh. Councillor Gibson, do you wish to speak to this item? Councillor Gibson, do you wish to speak
no,
to
I
the
don't.
item?
No, I
Okay,
don't,
could you
Mayor.
turn off your microphone?
Yep, I will.
All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. That takes us to item 10.2, Investment and Loan Borrowings Report as at the 28th of February. Moved by Councillor Berrigy, seconded by Councillor Gibson. Are there any speakers or questions in relation to this item? No? I'll put the item. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. That takes us to item 10.3, the Treehouse. Moved by Councillor Burke, seconded by Councillor Berrigy. Councillor Burke, do you wish to speak to the item?
Yes, Mayor. Mayor, just a couple of general comments. I want to thank our staff for the report. It notes that the establishment of a significant tree register would not add any value to the protection of trees in our LGA, and I take that advice on board. I note that at, for example, Randwick Council, they do have a significant tree register that states the following. All trees listed in our significant tree register require development consent to either significantly prune or remove. This is in addition to the usual process of simply lodging a tree permit application. This ensures that the whole range of important heritage and historic values associated with any tree or group of trees listed on the register are taken into account whenever they are assessed for pruning or removal. This more detailed process affords them the added protection they require. I'm going to assume that we have some different processes going on in the different councils, and I will follow up with our General Manager who has experience at Randwick Council to get some better understanding of that, so that I can appreciate that, and if I feel that the matter could be raised in future, I'll do so. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? I'll put the item. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. That takes us to the memorial for Jim Sard. Councillor Gibson, do you wish to move the recommendation?
Look, I'll just speak to. I'm wondering, quite frankly, about the.
There's no motion. There's no motion before the council. Moved by Councillor Berrigy. Is there a seconder? Councillor Mutton. Do you wish to speak to the motion, Councillor?
I wish to speak to the motion. I don't know how we've come to an amount of $50,000 for what I presumed would be a life-size sculpture of a pair of shoes. You know, a life-size sculpture would be the most appropriate tribute here, and a life-size pair of shoes would sit beautifully on a plinth. Now, I live with a sculptor. I know a lot of sculptors, and $50,000 is an excessive amount to spend on a sculpture of this size, I think. So
do you seek to amend the recommendation?
Well, I would just like I'd like to ask a question of who wrote the report. Could I ask how we came up with that amount, and how we're going to, And it also says that we're going to draft something and send it to appropriate artists. I'm wondering what you mean by appropriate artist, and I'd like to ask a question how we came up with $50,000. I know.
Thank you. I'll put that to the General Manager.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the budget was provided by the Community Services team. Just in regards to art, and depending on whether they're bronze sculptures or the likes, they can be quite expensive. Can I suggest that that the budget has been provided as a guide, and that any savings, once we do go out to the artists, will be reported back to council via the quarterly budget review process.
Okay, thanks for that. So we're not necessarily going to spend that whole 50,000? Look, I go out to foundries with my partner.
Question, allow the General Manager to answer. Thank you. General Manager.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the brief to artists would be provided, and that would be the budget that would be supporting that brief. If there are any savings once the art has been selected, then that would be reported as per the normal budget process. But council would be voting to spend up to $50,000 on that art piece.
Okay, again, I say I know I live with a sculptor and I go out to foundries all the time in Western Sydney where we get bronzes made up, and I've watched them, you know, this size being made up, this size being made up, and to have a sculpture cast in bronze is usually, and this is the best foundry in Sydney, it's usually about $6,000 or $7,000 max for something this big. So I'm just saying $50,000 is.
I'm sure it includes the intellectual property of the artist. So perhaps that may not be as much, but it would be part of the budget.
It's just it's a lot of money. We should have been a little bit more respectful to our budget and handled this differently, got some quotes from sculptors around Sydney and said to them, how much would it cost to do a sculpture this big in bronze in this sort of style? It's like ringing an electrician and saying, I want $50,000 worth of new lights. Instead of getting a quote for a new lighting system, we've given the amount of money that we're prepared to spend rather than getting in quotes first. I just think, I'm not going to vote against it, but I think this could have been better managed. As I say, I'm sure it will cost $50,000 now. Everyone knows we've got $50,000 to spend.
It's a budget allocation. Can we move on?
Okay, so I will be voting for it.
It's a budget allocation, it's not a commitment.
Yeah, well, I hope not. I hope we can do it more economically.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Are there any other speakers on the item? I'll just speak briefly to say I support the item. When you care about public art, it isn't a school project. It's about engaging an artist of quality to interpret and provide the memorial. And as Councillor Mutton said, it's a budget allocation. We've heard from the General Manager. It may well be varied over the course of the quarterly budget reviews. On those basis, I'm supporting the motion. Does the mover wish to have a right of reply, Councillor Berrigan? No, thank you. I'll put the item. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. That takes us to the Don Bank Museum Conservation Management Plan 2023. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Gibson, seconded by Councillor Welsh. Is there any discussion? No, I put the item. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Customer feedback and complaints report July to December. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Gibson, seconded by Councillor Lamb. Is there any discussion? I put the item. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Tender of 12/2022, lighting and electrical upgrade to St Leonard's Park. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Gibson, seconded by Councillor Welsh. Is there any question or discussion on that item? No, I put the item. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item 10.8, North Sydney Olympic Pool Redevelopment Monthly Progress Report. Is there a mover for the report? Moved by Councillor Gibson, seconded by Councillor Burke. Is there any question or discussion in relation to that item?
I do have a question. When is our site meeting going to be held? Councillor Santa suggested we have a site visit down there, and that hasn't happened. That was ages ago we've moved that.
Okay, thank you. That's the question asked, and I'll ask the General Manager to respond.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the site visit will be arranged for late in April, as discussed previously. I was hoping that we could wait to the commencement of the new manager for the facility, and he will join us on that site visit.
That sounds sensible. Thank you, General Manager.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion or debate? I put the item. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item 10.9, the revised 2023 meeting schedule. Is there a mover? Councillor Berrigy, seconded by Councillor Welsh.
I did want to speak to that. Well, I don't have that report in front of me, but so that was the meeting schedule. I know some of us have discussed that it might be appropriate, as has happened in every other council, that we have, at least half of December and probably the whole of January off, a 6-month break in the middle of the year. I don't know how other councillors feel about that, but that didn't happen.
Break. That would have us all in breach of the Local Government Act. We have to have a minimum of 10 meetings per year.
Yeah, but then we've had more than 10 meetings.
Yes.
What did you mean, 6 weeks?
Yeah, a 6-week break from the middle of December till the end of January. That's what the tradition of our council has always been, and I think councillors deserve a break away from council. This year we were back in as I say, I don't have the report in front of me.
The report is to change the April meeting to take into account the Anzac Day holiday. So the purpose is really to amend it to allow the meeting to be held on the 26th of April rather than the Monday the 24th.
And that's fine, but we could add on to this, Mayor, that we consider what sort of period we'll have at the end of the year.
It's in the report itself. So if there's no other discussion, Councillor Santa?
Sorry, Mayor, I just seeking a point of clarity, asking a question. There's no meeting on the 10th of April?
No, it's Easter Monday.
Is that?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
It's Easter Monday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll all be out looking for Easter eggs.
If there's no further discussion or debate, I put the item. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Councillor Berrigy.
Madam Mayor, I have a matter of urgency which I mentioned to you this morning, which I would like to put before the council, and I've actually sent it in, so it should pop up on our screen in a minute. I'll just pull it up.
Do you wish to just so we can vote on whether I can rule and then we vote on receiving the matter?
The motion is that the Mayor write to the Premier-elect, Mr Chris Minns, congratulating him on Labor's election victory on Saturday the 25th of March. That once the polls are declared, that the Mayor write to the member for North Shore and the member for Willoughby to congratulate them on their success and for being elected as our local members. That Council note the resolution. Sorry, I've got to go backwards. Sorry, just send it in. That Council welcomes the cancelling of the Beaches Link. The Council writes to the Treasurer-elect asking that the business case for the Western Harbour Tunnel be immediately released. And 5, that Council seek an urgent meeting with the Transport Minister-elect and the Roads Minister-elect to discuss the viability, impacts and alternatives to the Western Harbour Tunnel.
Thank you. I rule that to be a matter of urgency in circumstances where the next council meeting is not until the 27th of April. I put to the council that we deal with that matter of urgency. Is there a seconder to that motion? Councillor Spenceley. All those in favour? That's carried. Now, Councillor Beregi, it was whether or not this was urgent. That's what we've just voted on.
okay, yep.
Councillor Beregi, it's your motion.
Thank you, Mayor.
Is
I'd
there
like
a
to
seconder?
put the motion.
I was just going to
Seconded by
ask,
Councillor Lamb.
can I just read it for a second? I was just going to ask, have we got in there that we also write to the member for Willoughby's in there?
Can I speak to the motion, please?
Yes,
I just
if you
wanted to
read
make sure.
it's
It's
the
just
two
cut
local
off,
members.
Yep, okay, that's good. It's just cut off by the screen. I couldn't read it there.
Councillor Gibbs, Councillor Beregi, you have the.
Sorry, did you want to make...
Could you just drop 4 and 5 so we can see it on the screen?
If you just drop it down because we see the Zoom.
Is that?
Would you like me to take something on, Councillor Santa?
Yeah, could I propose an amendment that we add to that list Cammeray Reserve resumption to council management, Berries Bay follow-up with the new report, with the new government, the North Sydney Oval, the women's facilities, and...
Can I propose a number 6?
Yeah.
Yep. That that council also seek that council also seek meetings with relevant new ministers in relation to election commitments made to be delivered in the North Sydney local government area.
Yes, that would be fine.
Councillor Lamb, you take that on?
Yep, definitely.
It's election commitments from obviously the Labor government. I'm not sure we're going to get them the other way. So I'll just briefly speak to it. And thank you, Mayor. We don't have another meeting for 4 weeks, and I think we urgently need to get going. Council is very aware that on the 24th of January 2022, Council stated its strong opposition to the Western Harbour Tunnel and Northern Beaches Link projects due to the devastating impacts on the projects on our local government area. This included and is not exhaustive, that we have no business case for the project, no meaningful consultation, no alternative transport options, including public transport, a lack of filtering of any proposed exhaust stacks, the significant and devastating loss of our public open space and future public open space, the significant health impacts and on public health wellbeing, particularly on schools, our school children and our residents, the environmental impacts on our waterways, our reserves, our flora and our fauna, the inappropriate and unattested mitigation measures, the adverse impacts on our Aboriginal heritage and maritime environment, and the substantial increase in traffic flows through our local streets. Council also then, on the 26th of September, called on the state government not to enter into any contracts for the Western Harbour Tunnel Stage 3 or the Northern Beaches Link prior to the election, and we followed up in relation to all of those in relation to the the Ringa Freeway upgrade. We are now in this fortunate position where we know that the Beaches Link has been cancelled. That has meant that we are going to be saving Flat Rock Gully, but what we don't know is the new route for the Western Harbour Tunnel, given that we have changed methodology. So we don't know where it's going to come out. We also now are in this fortunate position of being able to seek meetings and have our case put to the new government. And I would like that to be done as a matter of urgency, and I would ask all councillors to support the motion.
Would you take an amendment where, I think it's in item 4, we should also be asking the government to look at an alternative solution for transport, metro solution?
Well, if that's not clear, I'm happy to clear it up. But what I did say in the motion, sorry, I've got to pull it up on my, was that we look at viability impacts and alternatives to the Western Harbour Tunnel. I'm happy to put including a metro line to the Northern Beaches if you would like. That's fine. I'm happy to take that on. Councillor Lamb, are you happy to take that on? Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just make a statement? The government's already committed to carrying up, the Labor government committed to delivering the Harbour Tunnel.
If there are no other speakers, I'll speak to that. They've just been elected and they might have committed to the Western Harbour Tunnel, but they haven't committed to the particular route. None of us know it because there's a modification application that has to be submitted now that they've changed the construction methodology. And so this is a moment for us to be able to really put the point to the new government, and particularly in circumstances when the Treasurer-elect, Daniel Mookhey, was the chair of the Upper House inquiry into the Western Harbour Tunnel. And so he's well aware of the issues that are facing us all in that regard. My very strong view and experience is that you don't give up the fight until the project's being tunnelled. There's a lot of opportunity for us to have an influence over changing it from now on. So, Councillor Santa.
Thank you, Mayor. And I would like to add that John Graham, the then Shadow Minister for Transport, said that the contract that was entered into for the Western Harbour Tunnel is a secret contract, so they're not aware of any conditions. They are aware that if the contract were to be cancelled, it would involve perhaps great public expenditure, and they're not prepared to do that. But they are certainly inclined to renegotiate any aspects of the tunnel, especially after adequate community consultation to ensure that the tunnel meets the community's needs.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? I'll put the item. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Councillor Welsh.
Mayor, I have a matter of urgency because, as Councillor Berge said, we won't be having another meeting for around a month, and there are a number of active Land and Environment Court appeals on properties in Neutral Bay, including Number 1 Hayes Street and the property on the corner of Wickham and Military Road, which may be resolved before our next council meeting.
That is a matter of urgency. I put that to the council. Is there a seconder to take that as a matter of urgency? Councillor Lamb. All those in favour? That's carried. Councillor Welsh, you have a motion?
I have a motion that council clarify its preference in relation to Land and Environment Court appeals, so that if agreement is reached in an S34 conciliation conference, council finalize the matter by consent orders to ensure that the community can see the agreed conditions and have an opportunity to make submissions to the court on the agreement.
For the community to make submissions?
Correct.
If consent, I'm going to answer that question if I may, or we can put it to Mr. Hill, but perhaps we put it to Mr. Hill. But first of all, I need a seconder for the motion. Is there a seconder for Councillor Welsh's motion? Councillor Lamb. And I'm going to allow her to speak to it shortly, and then if there are questions from Councillor Mutton, we'll put those to Mr. Hill.
I'd like to ask the General Manager at some stage, if I can, Mayor, about the implication, about any implication.
Well, yes, I've noted you'll be asking a question. Perhaps if we can wait for 1 minute, and then that way you will all be able to see on the screen the motion that is before you. Here we go. Can you move that, if it's possible, move it slightly up the screen so that we can, there, it's in there. Can everyone read it? Yeah.
Thank you.
I agree with that in spirit, I'm just not quite sure.
Well, I'll ask either the General Manager. First, I'll go to the General Manager. Councillor Mutton's question. Succinctly, I suppose it is that possible within the framework of Section 34 conferences? Yeah.
And I'm just worried about the procedure rather.
General
Through Madam Mayor, I'll ask the Director of City Strategy to comment.
Madam Mayor, Council, could I have the question, please? Is it a comment on the...
Comment on
the
what's
res-
proposed, which is effectively that if you come to an agreement
Yep.
in a Section 34, that rather than sign a Section 34 agreement, you finalise that agreement by consent orders so that there's an opportunity in the court process for the community to participate.
Yeah, good. I certainly have no problem with the sentiment behind the preference.
So the consent would be conditional on community consultation?
No.
That's all I'm worried about, how they...
It doesn't work the other way around. It's not conditional. This is a preference as to the way you'd like it to happen can always be put to the court, and on occasion, we'll be successful. That's generally how we tend to operate. It wouldn't be conditional the other way around, as you put it.
Thank you. Councillor Gittin, you have a question?
Yes, so because it would slow down the process. I think we've had this discussion before, haven't we, on numerous occasions. So you're saying we could try to do this, but it's unlikely, but we can't.
No, what I'm saying is what you're putting there as a preference is perfectly valid. You can continue to ask, and we do that for the purpose of making as much information available to the community, because it's not easy for the community to understand, let alone practitioners. So the preference going forward is not a problem at all.
We can't guarantee.
Just looking at the practical situation, you're in court, there's a consent order.
Yeah.
Can you sign that consent order if there's an ongoing right for community consultation?
Yeah.
Sorry, you need to put on... So, could someone turn off their microphones?
So it really is the practical position. In court, confronted with a consent order and a requirement here then to have community consultation. I'm struggling as to how you achieve.
That could never be the position. It's a Section 34 conciliation conference is a without prejudice procedure. There would be an agreement within that. And what this is going to is saying, don't do that behind closed doors. Come outside so the communities can see what you agreed. The consent orders hearing is the mechanism to allow the transparency.
Okay.
Sorry, point of order, Mayor. I'm not a lawyer, but is this not disclosing the outcome of the without prejudice discussion prior to it being formalised in court? Is that not how it reads?
As a chair, I think this is a lawful motion, and the reason I think it is, and I've ruled it to be, is that it's the council as a governing body giving guidance to council staff as to how it is that we seek for matters to be dealt with in our appeal when the council is the respondent in a merit appeal in the Land and Environment Court. This isn't tying the staff. It's with the staff still have to abide by legal advice and by the rules of the court. This is the governing body saying our preference is if you're going to have agreed that a consent order be issued, give the community an opportunity to understand what you're agreeing and make submissions to the court so that they have the opportunity to participate. There's a great deal of frustration in metropolitan councils particularly, that the Section 34 process that the court goes to locks the community out. People don't see what's happening, and this, to me, I might be just shortly be speaking in support of this. I'll be supporting this because it allows community participation and it doesn't bind the hands of council staff. It's saying, as a matter of guidance, our governing body wants our community to be included as much as it can be in the appeal process.
The use of the word ensure creates the problem that council staff can't do the consent order.
Well, I think consent orders do ensure that the community can see the agreed conditions.
So
that is the process. The practice note requires consent orders to be notified at least 7 days prior to a consent order hearing to every objector, and they have the opportunity to be invited to have the opportunity to speak to the court. So that's what that goes to. Consent orders do ensure that.
And can I just another question, if I may, Mayor? Isn't this what we already do, Mr Hill, in practice?
We endeavour to.
Yes, so this is not a real change, is it? We've always sought to have the community involved in consent orders.
I don't believe we have a council level position, which is a
But
clear,
it's what we've always
which is a
done
clear
anyway.
statement to the community, which
Yeah.
I think is a reasonably important
Yeah,
thing to say.
it's more or less what we've always done.
Councillor Spencer, you have a question?
Yes, point of clarification. Is this in relation to two properties?
Generally.
Or in general?
But it reads to be generally.
Yeah, that's it.
Are there any other questions?
I've got a question
Councillor
of
Burke?
Mr Hill. So last year I brought a motion regarding greater community consultation around section 34. Mine was more, once an agreement had been made, that it goes back out to community to be advertised for further community consultation, and that was basically illegal, for lack of a better word. And so this is proposing something within the process before that decision. Is that correct?
That's how I interpret it, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
So maybe if I could have proposed an amendment, is I think this is a matter of urgency because we're going to have a break for 4 weeks. I think we would all probably benefit from taking this further report on this. So if I could propose an amendment that this be the case, up until our next, well, up until we've had the opportunity to have a report.
Why don't you just add a second point that a further report, that a report be provided to council in relation to this at the next available meeting?
Yes, Mayor, but in that case, then we adopt the practice and then get a report, whereas I suppose I was hoping to make the practice temporary until we've had the report and then make the practice permanent based on that report.
That's up to the mover and the seconder as to whether they take that on.
I won't take that on.
That's clear.
If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion. It now includes a second, if you're happy to take that on, that a report be provided to council at the next available meeting.
Just to clarify, this report would be in
It's a part
as well
two, as well as.
Oh yes, then I will take that on.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, I put the item. All those in favour? That's carried. Are there any other matters? If not, that's the close of the meeting, and remind people the next council meeting will be on the 26th of April. Thank you all for your participation this evening. General Manager.
Recording stopped.